It's incredibly problematic when there are efforts presented to completely revise history.
Whoever records or puts pen to paper to write about history, their ideological framework or worldview shapes what they write. And I think there will be many attempts of people who question the veracity of the Christian origins of America, who want to rewrite history in such a way.
There's a massive effort by those on the radical left to completely rewrite the history of America. What's behind this revisionist history, and what are they seeking to accomplish?
I think what this country has represented is a lot of good things. We're not a perfect country, as human beings are certainly not perfect. But this country has done a lot of great things. I think American history has a lot to be proud of, and I think Americans should be proud of that.
The Declaration of Independence is what makes America so special, along with its Constitution and its Judeo-Christian roots. And with the Declaration of Independence, of course the people that authored it, and Thomas Jefferson in particular, they were imperfect human beings, but they wrote a document that was bigger than themselves. And I believe that the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were inspired because so many of the people involved were strong believers, and they wanted America to be a great nation that honored God.
I think there's been a long-term push, especially in education, not just the K-12 level, but certainly from higher ed, to basically turn around Americans and make them think that, well, not only is our past unexceptional, it's exceptionally bad. And I think that that narrative is so big in society now.
One recent attempt to rewrite our history goes by the name of the 1619 Project. This heavily scrutinized and widely debunked publication postulates that America was founded in 1619 rather than 1776.
The 1619 Project that the New York Times put out that argues, that the nation was birthed in slavery and that the Revolutionary War was fought to maintain slavery.
The 1619 Project has to put the founding of America in 1619 and not in 1776, because if it's at 1776, then we're founded upon ideals and documents that are pretty amazing. But if it's 1619, then we're founded on this idea of oppressor-oppressed.
And to many parents' chagrin, this misinformation is being taught directly to our students in the public schools. The Pulitzer Center announced that the work of the 1619 Project has been used to create curriculums in some 4,500 classrooms since August of 2019.
The 1619 Project is honestly a genius way for them to divide America further and ensure that young Americans are not only taught this in pop culture and taught this in the media, but now the 1619 Project is taught in American classrooms. So it's really important for not just conservatives, but for classical liberals who love the concept of America and the founding principles that we have today that made us so great. It's important that we all stand up and advocate for better education in the classroom, not the 1619 Project.
One facet of the 1619 Project is the idea of critical race theory, an ideology which posits that a person's sole identity is based on the color of their skin.
Critical race theory has its sort of inaugural convention, if you will, in Wisconsin, established by Derek Bell, law professor at Harvard University, but that's when it really, becomes public. It's a propaganda piece designed to take advantage of this sort of Gramscian Marxist idea of, two classes of people, oppressors, oppressed, hegemony. And so these guys are like, we have to present ourselves as, an oppressed minority group.
We also find teachers targeted through critical race theory with social emotional learning, where white teachers are supposed to learn, about their whiteness and how dangerous that is, and they're supposed to learn self-awareness of their racism and empathy for other groups. They're supposed to learn that their minority students are victims of their own racism, the white racism, and all of this is dangerous for our society. And people need to wake up and recognize it for what it is. It is a dangerous agenda. It's evil, it's sin, it is racism itself, and it's destructive.
In some school districts where critical race theory is being taught, parents are fighting back. For example, in Loudoun County, Virginia.
Loudoun County, Virginia, where fed-up parents there have launched a fiery new ad campaign calling out critical race theory in classrooms, aiming to oust 6 school board members who they say tried to target and silence them.
Our schools are not for ideology. Our schools are for education.
Critics note that the 1619 Project is laden with historical inaccuracies and is simply an attempt to smear America as a racist nation.
Essentially, the whole document is an attempt to undermine, I think, the values and virtues of our nation, and they're using race as the bludgeon to do that. We at the Woodson Center organized 23 plus scholars and activists to confront this 1619. We call ourselves the 1776 Unites. And as a result of our essays that we wrote, the challenges, public challenges, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who was the author of that, actually revised it.
Those propagating the ideas of the 1619 Project and critical race theory through both the media and education fail to hide their obvious Marxist agenda.
And it just shows they're so committed to advancing cultural Marxism or cultural terrorism that they're even willing to shade the truth in order to accomplish that. So what would you think would happen again if these people seize the levers of power across the board?
The goal is to really, it's a Marxist goal, and that is to decimate this nation, to undermine it. And they are hijack the civil rights movement to do that.
When examining America's true foundations with impartiality, it is clear that our Judeo-Christian roots have elevated America to be a strong force for good throughout the world.
Our history has empowered more people, given them the greatest levels of economic prosperity, the greatest levels of personal freedom to speak, to disagree with the government, to criticize the government, to assemble, and to encourage people to think like us. Those are some fundamental rights that we were given by God, enshrined in the Constitution and protected by government, that make us unique.
History matters so much. Look, I mean, where we came from, who we are right now, there's a reason why that is. There's a reason why America is a powerful, successful country, but not just that, I think fundamentally a good country. And there have been plenty of great powers, great empires in the past. I think America was built on something very different. I think we were a great country even when we were a very small country, when we were a very young country. I think we've built upon things in the United States that have made us a beacon of hope and liberty for people around the world.
As Ronald Reagan said, that freedom is always one generation away from extinction. It is up to parents to transmit that to their kids, and it's also up to schools, hopefully, to transmit that, although we can't always trust the schools to do that. So we don't want to be the generation that fails to transmit that legacy of freedom to the next generation.
I think Americans do have to stand up for the truth. I think they have to stand up for the good in our history. We want to build off of our history, not destroy it.